Okay, our next speaker for the day is Mr. Narendra S. Sahu. He's the director of Vista InfoSec. Mr. Narendra Sahu has over 20 years of progressive experience in IT, which includes a hybrid experience in information risk consulting, security auditing, and implementing security and network solutions. He's also the recipient of the Crest of Honor by the Indian Navy for services rendered in the area of information security. He has co-authored several books on information security with NIIT and is an external faculty to SP Jain Institute of Management Research on risk management. So I would now like to request Mr. K.G. Iyer to please come on stage and welcome Mr. Sahu. Over to you, sir.
Quite a few events, and I see in the audience my friends, a few friends who are almost like brothers to me, not almost, they are like brothers to me, and a few clients. I see my mentors sitting over here, people from whom I learned. I see people whom I've taught sitting over here. So I hope you understand when I say that when I come for an ISACA event, it's more like a family event. So it is almost like, it's family sitting over here. So it's always a great pleasure to be here, to be speaking in front of so many distinguished personalities, leaders of the industry, and the pleasure is all mine. Anyway, my presentation. Give it a minute, please. They're just getting it live. Topic is something interesting, actually. It is one of the hottest topic in the IT industry. It is disaster recovery. But it's not just disaster recovery. It is the latest standard that's come. It is ISO 22301. So I've tried to summarize a lot of information into a handful of slides because I have very, very restricted time. Now, so I hope you understand when I skim over topics, it's not intended to glaze over things, but the point is I don't have as much time. What I'll be doing is, after this session is over, we'll be having an extended session at the ISACA chapter meeting. So where I'll be covering a lot of things much more in detail. But over here, I'll be taking you a few things, give you an overview of the standard itself. There's a case study where we have done this thing for a major assignment, for a major client. So there will be quite a few learning, even for those who will not be able to attend the chapter meeting. Are we live? It's starting, so you can wait. You can have some coffee in the meanwhile. It is still starting. I can tell a joke. I just said to somebody in the morning, so I remember it fresh. All right, this guy in the hotel, he calls up. I don't know whether you've heard this thing, but this guy in the hotel calls the reception and says, "There's a major fight with my wife, and she's about to kill herself. Do something." And the professional receptionist says, "Sir, that's your internal matter." He says, no, she's about to jump out of the window. Do something. It's a serious matter. She's about to kill herself. No, I said, no, sir, that's a family issue. I cannot interfere in that. He says, no, it's not a family issue. It's a maintenance issue. The window is stuck. So, all right, and it's still starting. So, okay, okay, that's a good question. Of course, the earlier standard was known as BS 25999, and the latest one released in 2012 is ISO 22301. So my dear sir has got a good question. That is the transition that difficult? Well, yes. Yes. If I may just summarize, since while it is still starting, I'll summarize it instead of saying a joke. Much to the chagrin of Varun, so I'll answer it. Well, see, there are, in BS 25999, you just cannot say it's an upgrade to ISO 22301. An upgrade is a minor, like a few things here and there, some minor shifts here and there. No. There are like 6 clauses in BS25999. There are 10 in 22301. There are 56 control sections or shall in BS25999. There is 105 in 22301. So even the writers of 22301 don't say it's an upgrade to BS25999 because ISO 22301 is an international standard. It's not just like a British standard. Of course, even that was implemented, but the whole flavor of ISO is like it is worldwide, so to say, worldwide acceptability. So that said, they always say 22301 as a societal security. It is still starting, so please excuse me when I am doing this. Okay, it is started.
Yeah. Just copy down.
We'll have to pause the question. Instead of jokes, and that to sexist jokes. Yeah, that's one of my mentors speaking, Mr. Iyengar. You see, that's one of my friends speaking. As I said, it's a family event. Both of them are pulling my leg. So, all right. All right. Please switch. So, let's start. Now, the meeting objectives, the bottom line, I'm giving you a background of 22301, a quick run through the clauses. We'll be doing a very important session or important group of slides on the overlap between 22301 and other standards such as 27001, as you'll be needing. And last but not the least is a brief case study for a major BFSI client that we had done. Now, just some disclaimers from my side. Now, just jumping right into it. Just to get the definitions in place, what is BCM, Business Continuity Management? We are looking at a holistic management process which identifies what can go wrong with your business, what can potentially shut down your business, what can potentially cause great loss to your business, affecting the CIA, the A part, and what you are going to do about it with regards to identifying, quantifying the impact, and then finally providing a framework for organizational resilience or improving availability. So the focus is not C or I, you understand what I mean? Of the CIA triad, we are not talking about a C or I, we are talking about the A part. And that impact is fairly, runs through the entire standard, as I'll take you through. Now, why a BCMS? As they say, more importantly than not, it is talking about protection of shareholder value and enhanced compliance, safety of vital records, addressed health safety regulations. Of course, in India, it is every man for himself, you die, you die. But more often than not, in multinational companies and stuff, life has a value. So the health concerns, like as I say to my team also, whenever you're doing a risk assessment, if there is any sort of a threat, any sort of an impact which can endanger human life, by default, it becomes a very high risk item. Even though the financial complications may not be very high, if it is touching human life, by default, the risk is a very high risk. Impact has to be quantified as very high. So there's a reduced downtime, preservation of markets, improved overall security. Now, what do I mean by preservation of markets? As you know the statistics, most of the companies who are involved in 9/11, who are there in the building of 9/11, were not able to resurrect itself. It didn't rise like a phoenix out of the ashes, it just shut down. Now, I don't know, you may say 9/11 happened once in my lifetime. Yes, but the point is you're not aware of the other instances. Now, I don't know whether I remember the name of the building right. There's this MIDC bus station that is right next to it. I think there's the Akruti building or something. A few months back, it had caught fire. You heard of it? It had come in the newspapers, right? Right. So I was there in that building to meet a client. And I was shocked to see the level of devastation in that building. Like typically when, I'm also born and brought up in Bombay, and I feel like, okay, Bombay mein kya hoga yaar? Sab kuch to hai. We are safe most of the time, unless it's raining and there are potholes and you're on a bike. So unless that happens, you are safe. Your business is safe. Kuch nahi hoga. It's not in an earthquake zone, so to say, and never floods. Once in a while it does. So business continuity, should we spend that much money? But when I went to that building, there was a BPO on that floor. And it had to be, as far as what I heard from my client, it had to be shut down. Because it's simply, the fire brigade had shut off the building for 3 days, all electricity, all connectivity, everything was off. Even after that, to bring the building back, it took a lot of time. And the company simply couldn't take that hit. It was a BPO as far as what I heard. So there are instances in Bombay, that's just one. Another one of our clients, esteemed clients, again, I'm not pointing a finger, I'm sure they did their best. They were located in Worli side somewhere, and the building collapsed and a few people who died. JSW Steel must have, steel they're there, and they did their best. And people who they were evacuating, and while they were evacuating, the building collapsed. So the people who died literally laid down their lives. That's what I heard. So, but it happens. It happens in this city too. So it is something that you also need to be deeply concerned about. It's not just once in a while, it just happens to once in a blue moon, but once it happens, unless you are a Jindal Steel where you can take the hit and survive, you probably may not be able to sustain it. Now, the brief overview of 22301, it's the first international standard. When I say first, you may say BS 25999 was there, yes, but it's not really categorized because it's more like a British standard, BS. Again, I have nothing against them because I worked on BS 7799 and I feel it was a good standard, upgraded now to 27001. But it is called as an international standard. It is generic in the very essence of ISO. It is generic. It is applicable to all organizations. So it is not just for an IT industry, it's not just for a hospitality, or it's not just for an airline, it is applicable to everybody. It's generic. So again, when you say it's generic, it has to be implemented in the true spirit. You can play around with it. Business continuity standard evolves with 22301 by adding. Now when I say evolves, it evolves from something. Can I say that? When you use the word evolution, it means evolution from something. That from something is BS 25999. What I understand. So what has changed? Greater management focus. Can you believe it? I read the standard, I was very happy to see that, because one of the key changes, an addition of multiple controls were just for ensuring senior management commitment. I'll be taking you through it. It replaces, but cannot be considered as a plain upgrade. Let me be very, as I said earlier, it's not a plain upgrade. It replaces the entire standard. It's a major overhaul, as you can see. Is accepted by National Standard Institute in 163 countries, so it has got a worldwide acceptability in everywhere. It's an ISO standard, finally. Dependent standards. As the basic flavor goes with 27001, there are dependent standards. Like 27001 was there as a guidance, and there was 27002 or 17799, which was like the implementation guidance. 27001 was a mandatory requirements, right? So in the same way, it is BCMS requirements are there in 22301. You get certified on 22301. Dependencies are there in 22313. That is BCMS, the guidance, or you may do this or you may try doing it that way. And then finally, more important and the most important part of any business continuity is a testing. Can I say that? There is nothing more important than in business continuity than testing. They actually have written a standard on that. Of how will you test your BCMS, how will you evaluate, how will you do effectiveness measurement, how will you document it, how will you do your CAPA, you heard of CAPA, right? Corrective action, preventive action, how will you do that? Okay, layout of the standard. And don't worry, the standard I think it's already been given to you, it will be there on the ISACA website also, nothing to hide. So feel free to use the content. The different clauses, I've just summarized it in one slide. There is clause 4, context of the organization, which basically means how to identify what the company is doing, what the organization is into, the activities, the processes, the dependencies, the products it sells, the services it sells, the interplay of various departments across boundaries, all responsible over here. So in context of the organization, that is covered. Leadership, the entire control section leadership is how are you going to maintain and prove management commitment. It has written some of the most explicit requirements for management involvement. And if I may dare say, even 27001 is not that explicit in putting down on paper management commitment. But I'm sure that in the next version of 27001, which is soon to come, it may have those controls as well. But as of now, it's done a brilliant job with that. The planning part, that is finally making the business continuity, doing the business impact analysis, the business risk analysis, formation of the recovery strategies, the RTO, RPOs, you know the jargons. The support. Now the support is from the management itself and from the resources needed for rolling out the DR. Now when I say resources for rolling out a DR, it's not just a consulting company like us. It's also internal resources, trained resources, and it will ask you to prove how those resources are trained to manage a business continuity or a disaster recovery. So it's not that, okay, यहाँ का sysadmin है, वो हमारा, I'm sorry, we have a sysadmin in Bombay, and okay, he can manage the disaster recovery in Chennai also. What if that sysadmin, God forbid, dies on the site itself? Then we say, okay, we have a night duty staff working in Chennai, and he will be doing the disaster recovery. Yeah, but prove it, that he can do it. Prove it that he'll be able to bring that database back up. Prove it that in case the restore doesn't happen, he'll be able to troubleshoot Oracle. That's what I meant by support. Rather, that's what the standard means by support. I didn't write it. The operation is the final rollout of the standard of the disaster recovery plans, recovery strategies, and all those things. The performance evaluation is concerned with the testing part, the exercises. How will you test it? Is it going to be a structured walkthrough? Like I've seen ridiculous exercises in organizations where they have a checklist. Now that is an acceptable methodology for checking a business continuity. So they have like, okay, I will do this and he will do that, and they walk through the entire checklist. You understand what I mean? There will be a checklist of 50 activities to be done in case the site collapses. So that they have the checklist written, then they'll go through it, okay. And they figure out, okay, can we do this? Okay, baad mein, what will you do? Okay, then they will ask him. So he'll check his checklist. Okay, then I will do this 1, 2, 3. Technically speaking, that can be categorized as testing. But practically speaking, it will, in my opinion, I have not seen it stand the test of time. And many a time, let me dispel some myths. I've seen it happen. Shut down one router. Let us see if the router at the DR site also comes up. You are testing failover. You're not testing your disaster recovery. There's a difference. Disaster recovery happens in an unplanned manner. It could be like a database and your router going. It could be an entire rack failing. And in rack, there could be 20 non-connected servers. They will be not having any interdependencies, or they may be having, they may not be having, and the entire rack shuts down. There was a water leakage that happened just right on top of the rack. That is a disaster recovery testing. Then finally, the improvement part, the most important part, is the how are you going to measure what has happened from the testing and update your business continuity plan, your disaster recovery plan, and how are you going to take it ahead. So you understand the PDCA cycle, right? I'm sure like everybody is there. And you understand the PDCA cycle on which ISO standard is written. The entire PDCA cycle is over here. The improvement part goes with the A part of PDCA. The certification part is the same as for any other ISO standard. There is, you write it, there has to be management commitment, there will be internal audit and review, then there will be a stage 1 audit, there will be a desktop review, document review, then the on-site review, and management meetings are there, review meetings are there. The usual flow for certification is maintained in 22301 also, nothing new has been done. The next thing, 22301 and 27001. Like most of the companies that are going ahead with 22301 or thinking about going for 22301 or BS 25999 would be having more often than not 27001 already in place. And in my opinion, it is always, and that's what we tell our clients, have one documentation set. If you're doing ISO 27000 and 20000, also have one documentation set. There are overlaps. And there are overlaps between ISO 27001 and 22000. 22301. I call it as a ISM, not ISO. It's called as ISM, Integrated Standards Management. So as per that, you identify the overlaps and you write the documentation. So you have one documentation set which you can give to any auditor, any client, any stakeholder. So what are the overlaps? Oh shucks. Is it visible? Okay, I'll just read it out to you, don't worry. It is there in your presentation kit. I'm sorry, the lights are a bit too harsh. Okay, primarily the section 14 of 27001 is about business continuity, but it's an open secret that the 27001 requirements for disaster recovery is very minimal. Here it is much more extensive. So section 14, oh yes, thank you so much. See, this is Isaka. So, okay, so there is section 14 of ISO 27001, which aligns very perfectly with section 8 of ISO 22301. So there is section 8. There is 4.4 for business continuity management system. 8.2 talks about business impact analysis and risk assessment. Then there is business continuity procedures in 8.4. Section 6 of 22301 talks about planning the BCMS, which aligns again very, very well with section 14.1.4 of ISO 27001. There is exciting and testing. Again, there is just one control. Just one control in 27001 is talk about testing. And there are multiple controls in 22301 which talks about testing and effectiveness measurement. What about with other management standards? What about with ISO 9000, 14,000? What about 20,000, which is for IT service management? 22,301, 27,000, there are a lot of overlaps. And if you are setting up a documentation set, I always strongly recommend to have a singular integrated standards management framework. We always insist that to all our clients. Have a single way of referencing documents, single way of writing, single way of how the documentation will be assessed, how the internal audits will be done, the timings, everything. Have it done in an integrated manner. Because finally, you're not talking about just about 27001. You're talking about the culture within the organization for information security. You're talking about the culture within the organization for disaster recovery. So have an integrated standards management system in place. Yeah. It is there. I'm coming to the next slides. Yes, there is continual improvement talks about corrective action, preventive action, but there are a few more slides in the case study which will be covered. Now, I'm sorry, I have to rush through this. There is limited time. And I'm doing a case study for a major BFSI client that we had worked with. Now, it is one of the oldest and most respected organizations in the country. Of course, then it carries a major load of the business also on its enterprise vertical. Operations across India, it has got its local data center, it's got a data center in the IDC, it has got a co-hosted data center out of the state. More importantly, it is already certified on 27001. Then why did it decide to go for 22301? The ground realities. It was a requirement from major stakeholders, there were investors, they were insisting on it because they were like a major financial services provider, and in case of disaster, everything is shut down. Everything will shut down. There is a total dependency on IT, and as the president says over there, if the IT shuts down, everybody goes home. There's nothing to be done. If the IT shuts down, just go home. And they had faced avoidable, as I put it, as avoidable downtime. More often than not, it is like a painful experience that happens that suddenly pinches the management. That is okay, we need to do something about disaster recovery. And they start moving on that. So possibility of overseas operations, again for overseas operations, their tie-ups are insisting on a mandated and certified disaster recovery and business continuity procedure. With that in place, we just put down 17 steps for your convenience just to understand and flow you through how we had done it. We started off as it is mandated by the standard for the management support, what is needed for the budget, for rollout of the DR, for the rollout of the business continuity, for the project plan, identification of requirements. There is a list of requirements from whom? Their stakeholders, their clients, their SLAs that they had signed up with hundreds of banks. Objectives and scope, there is a BCM policy. Again, this has to be written. They have said that this has to be written by the senior management. When I say senior management, I'm not talking about a vice president IT. I'm not talking about middle level or something like that. We are talking about like a director or a CEO, the MD, to be a part of this thing. Now, objectives and scope, there is a BCM policy, what will be covered, not covered, what applications, what locations, everything. There is a management framework, who's responsible for what. And how are we going to, as a standard is very, very clear. One of the major changes is how are you going to demonstrate continual management support. So, of course, there is a management framework, then the RA treatment, risk analysis and the treatment, there is a methodology and report. That is, on what will be the framework for risk assessment, how will the reporting be done, what will be the levels, high, very high, high, medium, low, or how is it going to be? Is it going to be quantifiable or qualitative? How is it going to be? That becomes the methodology. They define the RTO and the RPO, that is recovery timeout and recovery time objective, recovery point objective. Just to give you a quick brief for those who are not aware, recovery time objective is for an application, you may say my RTO is 2 hours. That is your maximum allowable downtime would be 2 hours. Within 2 hours, your application should be up and running, along with all the dependencies. You may say my database is up, but the connectivity is down, then the RTO has not been achieved. Am I clear in that? Many a time, the companies, that's a major mistake that companies do. In 2 hours, can I restore my database? Yes, you can. But if the network is also down, will the network support the database? What are you going to do? So RPO will be recovery point objective. That is, what will be the maximum allowable, you can say, data loss possible. You may say that, okay, for static data, the company may say that my RPO is 4 days. So they're okay with data loss of 4 days. If it is static content, they may even say one week. They need almost real-time uptime, but the data is static. So even if you are restoring a data 1 week old, it's fine. It depends. Resources needed and how to provide them, the business continuity strategy. Again, very, very important. You will have to actually demonstrate the skill set of the people who are involved in the disaster recovery. You just cannot put a junior engineer. Now, how to react and recover, incident response plans and recovery plans, that we had get into it, how to react and recover, that is okay. Just think about it. I always say that there has to be a threshold. You may say my database, if it shuts down, it's a disaster, and then in that case, a DR has to be invoked. But look at it this way. There is a lot of issues when you are shifting to DR, because the entire traffic flows goes to the DR. Now your data at the DR site is updated and your data at the primary site is old. So when your primary site comes back online, you have to shift the data back from the old site to the new site, merge it. That again takes time. So the downtime is not just when the site actually shifts from the new site to the old site, but also from the old site to the new site. Don't forget that. There's a cost involved. There's a time involved. So many times the company says that, okay, you need somebody to authorize a disaster recovery to be initiated, even though the instance for disaster recovery has been met. Now, implement training and awareness, very important. Records are required. Records are required they've not said it explicitly, but we always insist on that, with assessments. Some sort of a questionnaire, some sort of a what happens if. The documentation maintenance of the business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans, the records has to be, we went into that, how will the documentation maintenance will be done. Exercising and testing the CAPA reports, to action. Now, you're doing something where, when you're doing an audit, there's an incident, then you raise a CAPA report. Here, when you're doing the exercise testing, whatever has been the deviation gets recorded in the CAPA report. So you may say my RT was 2 hours. But in that case, when you are actually doing the testing, it became 2.5 hours, or 3 hours, or 4 hours. It has to be recorded in the CAPA reports. Corrective action, preventive action. What happened, why it happened, what can be done to improve it. Now this becomes the base of 2023-01. Based on the CAPA reports, you will improve your documentation. Now, learn from experience, the post-incident reports, again, incident management becomes a very key area of 2301. Matter of fact, we also integrate section 13 of 21,000, which is incident management, with 2231 incident management also, not just the business continuity. Because finally, if you think about it, an incident when it crosses a threshold becomes a disaster. Can I say that? An incident when it crosses a threshold is a disaster. What is a disaster? And say, why is an incident? But cuts down its servers is a disaster. Now, from experience, now communication with the interested parties, again, this is one of the key changes. Now, that company did have BS25 pipeline. It was a fresh rollout to 22.301, so it was not that difficult. But in BS25 the focus on communication with external parties, the PR agencies, the newspapers, the government, as it may be needed, to the stakeholders, to your clients, is not that categorically defined. But in 22.301, this is very well done. You just cannot have a call tree. You understand? You just cannot have a call tree and say, this is how I'll be informing. You need to have a proper guide defined, a framework for reporting defined, and what will be who will be authorizing what is released, everything to be defined in this particular thing, communication with interested parties, and that's what was done. Finally, measurement and evaluation. Look at the dependencies of the CAPA reports. Again and again, it comes down to corrective action, preventive action. Whatever goes wrong, you have to document it out. Measurement and evaluation. Otherwise, you can write very good disaster recovery plans. Unless it is tested, evaluated, effectiveness measured, it's useless. Internal audit reports, again, we had to set the framework as to how the internal audits will be done, what will be tested, till what level will it be tested. Will it be an entire site shifting, because the organization may or may not want it. They may want to do it in parts. That is, okay, one rack, let us see if it works on a DR site. 2 racks together working in the DR site, or one application in totality working from the DR site. No, again, when you're doing a disaster recovery planning, you have to understand that not all the possibilities can be catered to. There has to be some boundaries that are earmarked. Now, improvement, corrective action, and then finally, last but not the least, the management review, minutes of meeting. For everything, you may have a monthly, you may have a quarterly, whatever has happened, the CAPA reports are presented, management, because management involvement is very important. In 27001, you may have a page where you write down the agenda and the minutes and it is signed off. Again, I have seen companies who are even doing that in the true spirit. And there are companies who just write it on one page and just send it for management to the MD, for signing to the MD signs off. The meeting never happened, but it is documented. But here, that's not the case. There has to be clear evidence. Who said what, how it was taken care of, what are the risk treatment measures, what are the issues identified, why did the management chose not to take care of these controls and chose to take care of these controls, all that has to be identified. A few mandatory documents that we drew up for them, again this will help you. I was told very clearly by Isaka, you need to have a very clear case study. It cannot be a general gyan. So I have put up some time on the case study, so I really hope it helps. Now, we drew up a list of applicable documents. The number one thing, what are the drivers for your business continuity and disaster recovery? So we drew that one up first. List of applicable legal, regulatory and other requirements. The scope of the business continuity system. The business continuity policy, that is a top level, 1-pager, 2-pager as you call it, not the entire documentation set. Business continuity objectives, the RPOs, RTOs and stuff. Evidence of personal competencies. Again, coming back to it again and again, the competencies of the people have to be clearly demonstrated. No wonder companies who are serious about disaster recovery are taking the step towards 22301. Because it's so beautifully written and it mandates things which are really required, not just for the heck of bureaucracy. Now, business continuity objectives, evidence of personal competencies, records of communication with interested parties in case of a disaster, business impact analysis. Again, they have drawn up clear charts as to how the BIA will be done. Because if I ask 4 people how the BIA will be done, they'll answer me in 4 ways, how a BIA should be done. But in this case, they have given very clearly how the BIA, what should be done and what should be the flow, what should be captured, not captured and stuff. Risk assessment, including the risk appetite. As I said, the boundaries. Can you have a risk of aliens abducting the entire data center? So, no, you can't. So, you need to have some boundaries as to what will be taken care of and what will not be taken care of. Now, a few more mandatory documents, incident response structure. Who will be responsible for what? First level, second level, who authorizes, till what level and what level of budget should be made available, money should be made available, transportation maybe need to be made available. Who's responsible for what? Who are the vendors, not just the people within the company? What are the numbers and what is the agreements with them? What is the turnaround time? Everything comes in the incident response structure. The business continuity plan, the recovery procedures are there. Results of preventive actions. The CAPA part starts. Again for the client, results of preventive actions. Again comes for testing exercises. Results of preventive actions, results of monitoring and measurement, results of internal audit, results of management review, results of corrective actions. These are all mandatory documents. I'm not talking about good to have. You understand what I mean? It's not a good to have. These documents are mandatory and we had drawn it up for our client. Most important is the CAPA. You can have very flowery written policies and procedures, no use. Where is the testing documentation? Some of the biggest challenges we faced. Huge company, one of the oldest, and if I took the name, most of you would recognize it, but I cannot. Ensuring management commitment. The senior management is just too busy, as in every company there is. The board of directors had to be involved, the managing director had to be involved, they had to be involved in the proper minutes of meeting, the review meetings, what is the business continuity policy, what are we not taking into consideration during forming the business continuity strategies. Everything the senior management had to be involved, and we had to prove it. Migrate existing plans to meet the new standard. Now when I said they were not doing 25 then what are we migrating? See, they were all 27th. They already had some sort of business continuity plan in place, which was not really of much use. That had to be migrated to 22301, and the documentation had to be integrated. Very important. Otherwise, you have one business continuity set in 27001, section 14, and a totally different set in 22301. It has to be integrated. Planning for the seemingly endless set of circumstances. Now, this becomes like a trap for you when you're doing the business impact analysis of possible recovery strategies. What can fail and in what combinations? Think about it for your company. This application can fail and that link can also fail at the same time. This application can fail and there was an earthquake over here. So the cooling system has failed and the application has failed. Then what will you do? Things like that. So the combinations are so vast that it cannot be catered to in all the angles. So learn where you are going to draw a line. Otherwise, it's going to be like an endless exercise. It will become more like a joke after some time. I've seen it happen. Because everybody is clamoring to show that they have thought of one strategy or one possibility where things can fail. And everyone will feel that their particular situation is unique and needs to be catered to. And that's where the egos will come into place. Planning for the seemingly endless set of circumstances, identifying the RTOs and the RPOs, assess impacts in a quantitative. I've written very categorically quantitative because when we go and do a BIA and we ask for any company, any business head, the RTO for their applications, recovery time. No. For my application, 10 minutes downtime I'll allow. Nobody says 2 days. There are a few, of course. Let me not make a blanket statement. But more often than not, when we are asking the people, 1 hour maximum, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Many a time, no, there is no downtime allowed at all. It has to be real time. If it shuts down, there should be zero downtime. Fine. Now what? What we do is, we sat with the technical people, and since we have technical people with us in our team, we drew up a bill of material. That is, okay, you need to have 1 hour downtime. This is your expense. You need to spend 50 lakhs. Or you need to spend 5 crores for real time. Are you going to have an expense? And they see that cost. And they realize that my 10 minutes is not worth 5 crore rupees. Acha, my budget is 25 lakhs. Kitna milega usse? Understand? What is my RTO? 25 lakhs I'm willing to spend. Then the horse goes the other way. There is a nice saying that I always say to my team also, I say when I'm teaching also. The cost of the fence should not be more than the cost of the horse. Are you understanding? The cost of the fence should not be more than the cost of a horse. You should not spend $5,000 to protect a horse worth $500. So what is the cost of the horse? Are you willing to spend $5,000 on the fence? Anyway, carry out the test or the business continuity procedures involved with the relevant interested parties. It should not be done, I'm repeating again, it should not be done only by the IT team. Never. It has to be done in the presence of the business people also. Their applications are being tested. You sit and test. You sit and check whether your operations are working. You sit and check whether your people are able to access their files, are able to access their records, are able to speak to the right people. What about communication? What about telephone lines? Everything. Let the people decide. Effectiveness should be measured with feedback from the interested parties, not by the IT team. With due respect, the IT team, I am an IT person. With due respect, the feedback should be from the interested parties. Okay, that's the end. And Varun will be happy. He's showing me his placard. 5 minutes left. Okay, so this is my favorite philosopher, Decotus. And as he rightly said, it's a question that enlightens and not just the answer. I remember Mr. Kadam, I'm very sad not to see him here. He used to say when I was learning, Naren, you have too many questions. And I have. This is almost like a head. Too many questions. So, actually, Yes, I was hoping you would.
ISO 22301 is not just the upgrade from BS 25999. It's a combination of three standards: 25999, NFPS 1600, and Z10 from NC.
Okay.
So NFPS 1600, which is National Fire Protection Association of the United States, they merged all this together. So US has contributed substantially. Unlike most of the time you see, there are two standards where US has contributed substantially, is ISO 22301 and ISO 50001,
Okay.
which is Energy Management System Standard. That's number one. Number two, you have given the comparison of all of the standards, 9, 14, 20, 27. They are very categoric on vendor management, on supplier management. How effectively 22301 has addressed the supplier management, which I feel is very integral
It is.
part of this.
It is. See, vendor, please understand, I've got 40 minutes. Of that, 5 minutes was spent in Windows was starting. So we'll be having a 3-hour session in the ISACA chapter, and there will be much more elaborate. All this vendor management, that's a key part. That's a key part. And I couldn't cover it. There is just too many other points also. The fire protection, it's not just the IT part, how are you going to take care of human life? Because this standard is not just for IT systems. It is for business continuity. Remember that. You understand the difference, right? So this is a BC standard, business continuity. It's not just a DR standard. So of course, the vendor management, the fire protection, the life, taking care of life and all. And most importantly, let me tell you, there is one point, you brought it up and I remembered. This standard is called a societal security standard. You understand? 25999 was not called as a societal security standard. This standard has got the name societal security in front of it. It means how you are going to identify social obligations and how you are going to take care of societal obligations. So yes, but I'll be covering it in the extended session, and Varun is tapping his fingers. So okay, I can take a couple of more questions.
One question from,
Yeah, you can have two. He's a good friend of mine.
so out of the 163 countries that you mentioned,
Yes.
Do you believe US has agreed to the standard?
Yes.
The NCQ?
Yes.
Second question is, out of the top 10 companies that, in India for that matter, do you think this particular standard is being applied, or is it still in the infancy?
Can you hold the mic a bit closer? It's not catching the question, if you don't mind.
The 22301 standard. If you look at the top 10 companies in India, do you think this is catching up, or is it in infancy or being matured, or what stage do you think?
I don't see him here, and I hope he doesn't kill me for saying it. Well, okay. Well, they are, and most of the companies in India, especially the top companies, even though there is no, regulatory compulsions on the government like the US, they are very serious about that. Very serious about that. Like there's a state bank who was here. I don't see the gentleman, good friend of mine. So they are there on 22301. And most of the top 10 companies, you can say, are working on that. I cannot really quote names because there are some disappointments, and I hope you understand, because potential clients. So, yes. Anybody else? Come on, either I'm too good or it didn't make sense at all. Which part it is? Okay. All right. Okay, but there is one more thing. I forgot. He is pointing to me from there. There's a feedback sheet on your tables. And as the tradition that you've been doing for the past 2 years, please fill up the feedback sheet. We have a wonderful gifts, rather 2 gifts. It's not like first prize or second prize. There is no prize. It's just a lucky dip that we have. Every year we've been having it for the past 2 years. It's the 3rd year in a row. And you can ask the people who won that it is something really nice. And no, it is not a 4 GB memory drive. It is something nice. All right. When my wife bought it, I thought, should I gift it or should I take it? So, so please fill it. And towards the end of the day, we'll be announcing the lucky dip. It will be very fair. Some senior gentlemen will be dipping into it and picking it up in front of you. So, and the most important part is I really would love to hear your feedback on my presentation. If there is anything, these are my contact details. You can always write to me, call me, and I'm there to answer you. I'll be outside in my booth for some time, but beyond that, you can always write to me. And this presentation is there. I think it's been given to them. Yes, the presentation. Okay, it will be given to you. So all the details are there, the slides are there for you. Anyway, thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. That was very comprehensive. I would now like to request Mrs. Bhakti Joshi to please come up on stage and present a small token of appreciation. Also, I think you missed the last slide here. These are Mr. Sahu's coordinates. Now we'll be breaking for tea. We'll be reconvening back here at 11:25. I request you all to please come back on time. Thank you.